got this 2010 Victory Cross Country that I'm working on, and I just got the panels back from my painter. So I'm going to do today something a little different. I'm going to actually go through putting all the panels on, mounting the fenders in real time here, so you can see how well this is designed and for ease of construction and that type of thing. Before I put the panels on, I just want to mention there's some side plates here with a little deflector. Those are kind of unique to the V-twins and a lot of the air-cooled bikes. I'll put something like this. The air that comes through the side panels can hit this deflector and actually add more air to the flow that goes across the engine. There is a 14-inch fan in here which runs all the time to make sure that the engine stays cool even when you're at stoplights and at parade route, that kind of thing. There's also a blending that goes on as the air travels through these side panels, and you'll see this when I get them assembled. Some of the air goes in here, but a lot of it goes past here to the passenger to dilute the air mix so that they don't get just hot air from the engine. They get actually a cooler air that kind of redirects the hot air and blends with it and makes sure that the rider comfort is also taken care of. So what I'm going to do is start getting the panels ready and bring them over here. And this is what they look like before they're assembled. This is actually a two-piece unit. It's blended in the middle and welded together. And you see that there's hooks on here. Let me get this into position. You can see how these hooks just drop onto the frame. And there you go. That's all it takes to drop that in. There's a screw here and a screw here, which I'll put in. I put those in by hand. It's actually a self-tapping screw like this. And I'll mount those by hand rather than with a air wrench, because you don't want to strip those out. So we'll get this panel on, I'll get the other panel on, then the hood and the top bonnet goes on. And as you can see, my painter is pretty top-notch. He does really a good job. I'm very happy with his workmanship. He takes a lot of pride in what he does here. Part of the trick here is you gotta get that bottom hook has to get into place. There. That one's down. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the screws in. One of the common things I see with bikes when I bring them in here is a lot of things that are way over tightened. These do not have to be, I'm not going to use two hands and grind on these things. I'm just going to tighten them enough to hold them into place. That's all that's really required. But I see drive belts, the covers on the reservoir are over tightened. I got to use a pipe to get a little extra leverage to get them loose. I'm not going to put this front one in. Well, I will, but I'm going to take it back out. I'll put it in just to get this thing aligned. There's actually a little metal cable that hooks onto this, which is a cable stay for the hood. So that one's going to actually come out in a little bit here. But that basically is all that holds them in there. They're hooked well on the bottom. This bonnet sits in here and it sits right on top of these and holds those in place. Now, before I do any of that, what I'm going to do is I've got wink lights that go in the front here. I've got a strip light that goes on the edge here. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video, do that kind of stuff, and then we'll continue once that's done. But as you can see, I've got probably 5 minutes in it so far. Most of that time I spent fetching the parts. Okay, I've got the strip lighting on the side here, as you can see. And that's wired into the terminal strip here, and it's actually hooked into this relay. The relay actually runs the fan. It's going to run all the lighting. This end one here is hot all the time, And that's designed, he has a plug-in on the side here where you can plug in his trickle charger and charge the battery. The battery's been relocated. It used to sit right in front of the engine. It's been moved up front here. The pan that goes in here will actually cover this. So to get at the battery, he just has to lift the tray out and can hook right onto the battery, pull it out. It's going to be really, really easy to maintain that. There's a, I believe this is a 10 amp fuse. So, you know, once in a while what happens, you put a trickle charger on and you hit the starter button and it blows this fuse, which will kill all the electrics in front here. So I have to make sure the owner knows that this is something he has to watch, that if the lights quit working, that it's just this fuse. So anyway, that's all done. I've got the wink light in here, and I thought I'd do a little bit here on explaining how to replace this. Now on all the lighting that I put on, I use wire nuts. I don't use a crimp connector. And I had one customer complain that I'm using wire nuts instead of crimp connectors. There's a really good reason why I use wire nuts. One thing, it's more expensive to do it this way, but it's actually a better way of doing it. I have never had any trouble with these edge lights going bad, but I do occasionally have one of these wink lights that usually the center spot goes bad, and it'll just, for no reason at all, just stop working. And if that's the case, I normally I don't send out one, I send out a matching pair. And this is what they look like. It's got the halo on the outside, which is usually yellow, and the center is white. And I usually tape them together like this just so that they're easy to install and remove. To remove these, I try not to use an adhesive. They're kind of a interference fit. So I push them in there, and then I tie the wires on the back to hold it so it can't creep forward. If they are loose, I'll put a couple small dabs of silicone sealant in there to hold them in place. But normally I try not to use anything. To get them out, you take a piece of pipe or something like this. You unhook your wires, which are wire nutted for a reason. And you slip this in, and then you just kind of pound it on the back. So I'm going to remove this one by using that method so that you can see how easy they are to get out of here, just like that. And as you can see, it pulled right out. And then to install these, you basically just push them in. And as you can see, it's kind of an interference fit. Sometimes you have to get on the edge here and with like a little block of wood or a wood shim or something and just kind of tap it. You got to be really careful not to crack this ring. So, and you don't want to pound on any of this. You kind of want to push it in there by hand, kind of work it in with your thumbs. But I try to get these so that they're just a snug fit like that, and they're not real hard to put in or replace. And of all the things on the whole bike, the only maintenance issue I've ever had is these lights going bad. So, you know, that's why I'm doing this, just to explain how they go in and out. And then again, they're wire nutted for a reason. If I use a crimp connector, what's going to happen if you have to replace the lights, you end up cutting the wires, and then the wires are too short, so you got to replace the whole harness. Or if I wire nut them, then you just unscrew the nuts, put the new deal in, screw them back together, and you're good to go, and you don't have to do any extra. So I'm actually doing that to make the maintenance easier. The whole premise of this is it should be absolutely maintenance free, and if there is any maintenance to be done, it should be done very easily. And that's the whole premise behind everything here. So the lighting, the lights are in. I'm going to go ahead and wire the harness for these lights, and then we'll continue with the rest of the assembly here. Okay, the wiring is all finished, and as you can see, I wrap it in this conduit, which goes over the wiring here that goes to the wink lights, and it just makes it neater. It doesn't really do any, it really has no structural benefit or anything like that. It just looks better, even though this all gets covered. One customer did complain that the wiring was exposed and didn't like that. And because of that, I started doing this. So it's actually beneficial if people, you know, mention things they don't like. I do pay attention, and a lot of the changes I've made is based on people saying what they'd like to see, what they'd like to see done, something they'd like to see changed. So I do try to really, you know, make changes based on what is better for the customer. So we're going to go ahead and continue putting all the panels on, all the wiring's done, all that's all set, wink lights are in. This bonnet here is kind of an important piece. It basically holds everything together. And it just slides in between the pieces here. It lays down like that, and there's 2 screws in here, which I do put those in also by hand. I don't use any kind of a wrench to put those in because I don't want to strip them out. So I use this is actually a 3/8 nut driver. This is what I use to put these in. And like I say, like everything else, they're designed to be snug. So I don't put 2 hands on it, I don't put a wrench on it. Initially I have to use an impact screwdriver to drill the hole, because these are self-drilling. And that's as tight as they need to be. So that's not going to come loose, finishes it off really nicely. There will be a foam strip that goes here. The strip is not designed, it's actually a fairly loose material. It's designed to just keep the hood from scratching this and vibrating. It's not designed to be waterproof. We'll go ahead and slip the hood on, and that pretty much finishes up this. And the way the hinges are done on this, you can see that the female part of the hinge is here, and the 2 pegs that they slide into are different lengths. So I can start the left side and then line up the right. There. And there you go. So I put a little piece of rubber hose on this longer peg, which prevents this from, so when this is open, it doesn't slide off to the side here. There'll be a cable that goes from here. I mentioned earlier this one has to come out. There'll be a cable that goes from there to the hood. So it opens about this far. But this makes a nice setup. It's also set to ride against these. As you notice, it's a snug fit there, but it can't move sideways. It's really held in place. Fits very nicely. As far as waterproofing, there's no gasketing. If you look at the way this is done, water would have to go across here, go up a 1/2 inch, go over, and then drop down. And then this has got a 1/2 inch lip, so the only way water can get in there is you take a pressure washer and spray right in this edge. Water that comes in the top here will actually drip off this edge. There'll be a metal plate here to cover all the electrics, and it just runs down into the body. I've driven mine through hailstorms, rainstorms. We had to pull off the highway a couple times because I was hydroplaning so bad, and the trunk was dry. So it really is very water resistant. I will never use the term waterproof because there is no such thing. That does not exist. But as you can see, everything's looking pretty good. I'm going to turn the key on, and you can see plenty of lighting. You can hear the fan running. And the fan basically blows right on the engine. Not barely out here at all, but right up against the engine, which is exactly what it should do. So next step is I'll put the 2 fenders on, and then I got to put the key in here, and I still have to build the storage tray, and that's about it. So I'll get the fenders on here. That'll be the next step, and then we're all done. Okay, the fenders are actually designed to be removable. I use a 1-inch stainless steel bolt to hold them in place, and all the bolts I use are stainless steel. That's all I use on here. And there's 4 on each fender. Now, typically the fenders don't need to come off when you're like changing a tire or doing anything like that. Unless I put on some of the bikes, I'll put a bonnet on the outside, like a trim piece, so you can't get the tire off unless you pull the fenders. But as you'll see, it just takes a second to put these fenders on. And the lock nuts are also stainless steel. And the inside of the fender is powder coat, along with the The hood and all the metal parts are all powder coated on the inside. All the joints are sealed with a 3M 8115 panel bond adhesive, which basically glues the whole thing together. And this is the one part where I actually do use a power tool. And there you go. I'll put the other one on, and I would say the bike is ready for the road. This is kind of the fun part, is getting it all together and seeing if it turned out as I anticipated. As far as design, I've kind of freelanced the design part of it. This is the only cross-country reverse trike in the world. I'm the only guy who does the custom. In fact, my design is set up to do any kind of large motorcycle. So a good percentage, I'd say probably 40% of the bikes I do are the only ones like them in the world. And this is the only cross-country that's been done. It's very much like the Victory Vision, except it doesn't have the lower fairing and all that. But the frame and the engine and the whole back of the bike is basically a Vision. Excellent. This is just an excellent machine though. I just love these Victories. So we'll go ahead and snug this guy up. And you do develop a feel for this kind of stuff, so you know how far to go with them. And there. So what's left now is just a little bit of putsy work. I got to put the lock in here, got to build the storage tray. But other than that, this is 100% done. Wednesday, it's 0 out right now. Wednesdays, it's supposed to be in the 30s. I'm not real concerned about temperature. I'm more concerned that everything's icy out there. If the roads dry off, I'm going to take it out for a test drive, and I'll do a little video on the actual test drive. There is kind of a system I go through to verify everything. When I test drive, the main thing is to make sure the steering is square. If it's not, I have to adjust the tie rods to get that aligned. And the other thing is to take it down the highway and see if I got any wheel bounce. I do balance all the front tires, but once in a while I have to take them back in and get them rebalanced. They're real fussy. The front tires have to be perfect. And the tires I'm using are actually an Achilles tire. I really like them. They seem to be, pretty good. They stay nice and square. So other than that, we'll do a little walk around here. And we'll see how she looks. So we'll get back here a ways, and you can see she fits together pretty good. I got to put the saddlebags on it yet. That's really going to finish it off. But as you can see, everything fits very nicely. We went with a little bit of an edge trim on the back there just to accent that a little bit. And as you can see, you can see right through the machine. So air that comes through here is going to come through here, hit the cylinders and cool them. Air that comes through here is going to cool the passenger. And the whole idea here is to make this thing so it's practical, not only practical but good looking. And I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. I think it's got a real nice angry look to it. I'll get up here in the air where you can see what's going on. It's kind of fitting the Excelsior logos in the back there, because there's a lot of similarities between the Victory and the ill-fated Excelsior Hendersons. A lot of the engineers from Excelsior ended up at Victory. So, there's a little bit of design crossover there. But nice bike. This is just a beauty. And I'm kind of anxious to get her out there and see how well it drives. So the only other thing I want to mention, and people ask me this, what does the 1Z stand for? Get this so that the light's not in it. And what the 1Z actually stands for, and I kind of borrowed this from Kawasaki, to tell you the truth. Hopefully they won't get upset with me. But I had a 900Z1, and the whole story behind the Z1 was it was a bike that was destined to do or designed to do anything. It could be a street bike, it could be a back roads bike, it could do anything. And actually the way I designed my trikes, these are sport trikes. They're designed to go off-road, on the gravel, on the dirt, you know, the back country. You take those scenic areas that are, you know, off the beaten path. And the whole design here is for that reason. And so the 1Z means it'll do everything from 1 to Z. That's what that stands for. So hopefully that clears up that question. Okay, this is the final shop video on the cross country here. Everything's completely done. The only thing that's left is to clean it really well and polish it up a bit. But first I have to take it out for a test drive. Tomorrow's going to be in the mid-30s and the roads will be clear. So I only have to drive it about a mile just to make sure everything you know, works properly and get it up to highway speed and that kind of thing. So we'll take care of that tomorrow and I do a little road video on it. But this morning I actually finished every little minor detail. Put the bumper on the front, and I finished up the storage tray, which is in here, which pulls out, and you can see I put a little shield over the wiring so no water gets on that. The battery is really easy to get to, as you can see, and the pan just drops in there. It's a smaller than normal pan because of the battery placement. I still have a little grate that I throw on the bottom to keep everything kind of off the bottom in case water does get in there. But other than that, she's finally down on the ground. These things get hoisted up on the lift and they stay there until I'm done. But she's all done, ready to cruise down the road. So I'm kind of anxious to take it off for a test drive. It's kind of got a nice little stance to it. The front end's a little bit higher than the back, so it's got that little bit more aggressive look to it. You can really see the Arlen Ness influence on this bike. The saddlebags are huge. When you get them off of there, they're really quite big. There's a lot of storage, and as you can see, they go back. There's lights actually in the saddlebags themselves. It's really a well-designed bike. And I like the little rack on the back here. I'm actually going to buy one of those for my bike, my Victory, because I like that one so much. But the styling on this bike is really good. I like the look of it. The fairing is kind of like the Vision, but a little bit different. It's very similar though. And what I did on the front here is I put the smoke flames actually have kind of a swoop affair to them to kind of blend in with the flare on the fairing there. So hopefully the owner will like that. I think it kind of blends together nicely. And we did the Endeavor in red to match the calipers and bring out a little bit of red, which is on the bike, on the Victory logo there. So it's just got a little tinge of red to kind of tie it all together. So yeah, this was a real fun project. I really enjoyed doing this one. It's actually got a wide body. The body's quite a bit wider than normal, mainly because of the way I fit to the crash bars to make it blend in the rear. I had to leave the front a little bit wider also, otherwise it would look kind of funny. And it'd be there'd be a really sharp bend in the transition there, which would be really awkward looking. So it really worked out pretty well. I think he's going to be real happy with this. And I have every reason to believe it's going to go down the road really stable. Mostly the V-twins go down the road really well. So this will be it for the shop portion of this.